How's it going? My name is Troy Briscoe, and today the injury that I'm covering is hamstring strains. So my objective for my audience is what a hamstring strain is, what causes hamstring strains, and exercises to help prevent this injury. So without further ado, let's go into what it is. So a strain in general is a tear to the muscle. So a hamstring strain is a tear to the hamstring muscle. And then what causes it is tight hamstrings. Specifically, when you have tight hamstrings and not warming up properly before you go into some kind of athletic movement or a sport, something like that. And then exercises to help prevent this injury. I'm going to go over, I know the rubric says 3 exercises, but I'm a little bit of an overachiever, so I'm going to do 6. And my reasoning for this is because there are two different scenarios and that can cause tight hamstrings. So for one scenario, you shouldn't be doing the same exercises for the other scenario. So I think it's very important to make that distinction, which I'll be going into right now with my fancy dancy whiteboard. So the first scenario that I'll be going into, if I can write, is short but tight hamstrings. So short but tight hamstrings. So this is when the hamstrings are a little bit overactive and can potentially be taking over for the glute, or like the glutes and hip extension. So the gluteus maximus is the main hip extensor. So the hamstrings could be taking over for the glutes in that action, causing tight hamstrings and shortened hamstrings. So for this, 3 exercises that I picked out to help prevent the tightness of this hamstring leading to hamstring strains is, first and foremost, a hamstring stretch. And then also strengthening the quadriceps. The antagonist muscle of the hamstrings is the quadriceps group. So when this muscle back here, the hamstrings, is more overactive and tight, the antagonist will be most likely a little bit underactive and lengthened. So we want to strengthen that front side a little bit. Specifically, your hamstring should be about 60 to 70% the strength of your quads. So your quads should be a little bit stronger than your hamstrings in order to have proper link tension and force couple relationships within your body, around the pelvis. So specifically, the strengthening exercise I'll be doing is a banded knee extension, which I'll get into after I get done laying everything out. So banded knee extension. Cool. So like I said earlier with hip extension, how the glutes are the prime mover, and when hamstrings take over, that's when they can get tight and overactive. So we want to reinforce strong glutes. So a good exercise for that will be a prone alternating hip extension to strengthen up those glutes. So prone alternating hip extension. So that's scenario 1, where the hamstrings are short but tight. And again, tight hamstrings is what predisposes people for hamstring strains. And then the second scenario are lengthened but tight hamstrings. So to show the relationship around the pelvis, I have a diagram here that's really helpful for understanding what is going on here. So we can zoom in close here. So these are the muscles that act at the pelvis. So you got the hamstrings down here. This is the side view, the lateral view of the pelvis. Hamstrings, you can pull it down this way. Rector spinae, hip flexors, and rectus abdominis, which is the more superficial abdominal muscle. So when the hamstrings So again, this example is lengthened tight hamstrings. So in a lengthened position for the hamstrings, that is an anterior pelvic tilt when the butt is more so poking out rather than a neutral position. So in this position, hamstrings are lengthened and the pelvis is drawn anteriorly. So in this scenario, the hip flexors are tight and overactive, which help draw it forward, as well as the erector spinae. And then to help fix this issue, get the pelvis in a more neutral position, you want to strengthen the rectus abdominis and then strengthen the hamstrings while stretching and inhibiting the hip flexors and erector spinae. So the 3 exercises I have picked out for this scenario is a strengthening exercise for the rectus abdominis. It gets the hamstrings as well as a hamstring strengthening exercise, and then a stretch for the hip flexors. So now that we have a good understanding what's going on at the pelvis, we will go into the exercises I picked out to target the muscles I have just laid out. So, like I said, we are going to do an exercise for the hamstrings, which is I've selected to be a yoga ball curl. And then we are going to do a sit up, almost right, crunch, sit up with heels over a bar or anything that can cause that can help you pull in with your heels. I'll explain that once we get to the exercise. Might not make sense right now, but a sit up with heels over bar. So again, I'll explain this in a bit. And then lastly, a stretch for the hip flexors. So just outline the exercise we'll be covering, 3 different ones for each scenario. Again, because I think it's important to distinguish the scenarios at which are going on, because you wouldn't want to strengthen a hamstring for an already tight and overactive hamstring. So starting with scenario 1, short, tight hamstrings. Hamstring stretch. Could you come over here for me? So this one, just prop up your foot. For example, a couch, since I'm in my house, hashtag self-quarantine. But you could do a box, a bench, anything that you can prop your heel up. And then from this position, want the knee to be a little bit bent. This will help you get up more in the belly of the hamstring rather than a completely straight leg. So a little bent knee, and then from here you're just hinging forward. I don't want to see your torso coming too far forward. Simply hinging as far as you can, keeping that back nice and flat until you feel a good stretch in those hamstrings. And this will be repeated with both legs for 2 to 3 sets of 30 to 60 seconds for a static stretch. Next up, a banded knee extension to work the quadriceps. Will just be right here. So if you have a band like this, you'll hook it up to a sturdy post, whatever it may be. You stand right there. So you get some good tension on that band, and then simply bring that heel up off the floor, bending the knee, and then bringing that heel back down, knee straight, and tightening those quadriceps. Really feeling the burn in the quadriceps. So this will be more of an endurance exercise, getting upwards 15 to 20 reps for this exercise for about 3 sets. So 3 sets, 15 to 20 for that endurance exercise for the quads, really working on strengthening those quads with the mini band or with the long band. And then the prone alternating hip extension, again to strengthen the glutes, because in this scenario the hamstrings are tight but overactive, which are taken over for the glutes. So for this, we'll get in a prone position on the floor, and then you'll alternate bringing your leg up and back down, keeping that leg nice and straight, really focusing on contracting the glutes with this exercise. So again, you could do a lot of reps for these, about 10 reps with each leg for 3 sets is recommended. So those are the 3 exercises for the scenario 1, which can cause tight hamstrings, which is with a short shortened, overactive hamstring in the back. So moving on to scenario 2, which is the lengthened hamstrings with the anterior pelvic tilt. So first up, yoga ball curl, because we want to strengthen those hamstrings to get the pelvis in a more neutral positioning, which will decrease the tightness of the hamstring and decrease the risk of a hamstring strain. So with this, yoga ball curls, you're going to get your feet in the middle of that yoga ball. You're going to push down toward the floor, and from here your hips are going to come up, keeping that balance and good core stability as well. Hips come up, curling in, focusing on squeezing those hamstrings, coming back out, and then resetting. In, out, reset. Very good strengthening exercise for the hamstrings. For this one, 10 reps of 3 sets yet again. And then after that one, we're going to go into our sit-up with heels over a bar or ledge, whatever you have at access to you. So I'm going to be using this ledge right here. Beth, could you show them what we're working with? Awesome. So again, this will allow you to pull in with your heels, activating the hamstrings, because when a lot of people do sit-ups, or they don't have anything at all for their feet, they utilize their hip flexors to help them get up. Especially when someone stands on their feet, that's when their hip flexors are even more engaged. And again, the hip flexors can help draw that anterior pelvic tilt, which can worsen the issue, further lengthening the hamstrings and making them even more tight. So we want to pull our heels in, activate those hamstrings as you sit up. So this is a kill 2 birds with 1 stone, strengthening the rectus abdominis by crunching your torso upward and pulling in, strengthening those hamstrings here. So for this one, I recommend 12 reps for 3 sets. Is a general recommendation for this one. Excuse me. And lastly, a stretch for those hip flexors, which when they're tight, again, can anteriorly rotate the pelvis, tightening and lengthening those hamstrings. So for this one, we'll be over here. You'll get a pad for your knee and kneel, half kneeling position. And it's pretty simple. You're gonna rotate your pelvis under, tightening those glutes and letting your quads and hip flexors relax. So you'll feel this stretch in your hip flexor and probably a little bit in your quad as well. So to further intensify the stretch, you'll reach up overhead. Could you come stand right there? So while you have that pelvis tucked under, you're gonna reach up and bend a little bit to that side where your leg is up. That'll intensify that stretch a little bit. And again, same for the static stretch for the hamstrings as earlier. It'll be 2 to 3 sets of 30 to 60 second holds for a good static stretch, which will lengthen that muscle and fix the force couple and link tension relationships around the pelvis, which will reduce the hamstring tightness and decrease the risk for hamstring strains that are a result of tight hamstrings. So those are the exercises and the explanation of what the hamstring strain is and what causes it. Thank you so much and have a great day.